we raise the minimum wage, then prices will go up. Then we'll just raise the minimum wage again. It's called mutually assured destruction. What do you think? It's a one.
Okay, let's talk about the minimum wage, because this is a perfect example of where the Democrats seem to care more about performative policy than actually doing things that help people. Now, I'm a data scientist that loves talking about politics. I have a PhD in economics. I spent 7 years with the government, including at the Federal Reserve and the Securities and Exchange Commission. So let's talk about politics, but this is also the type of thinking that you need to be successful as a data scientist, understanding these unintended consequences of actions. So let's put aside all the moral plays about whether businesses are making too much money and if more should be going to employees. And let's just pretend that the only thing we care about here is helping low-income workers. So we can assume that the goal of the Democrats putting together these policies on the minimum wage is to improve the economic outcomes of low-wage workers. So let's take that as the goal and see if they even do this much. So when we're talking about increasing the minimum wage, it's not just about what happens to prices in the economy, but it actually affects the hiring of low-wage workers and also the hours that these workers are putting together. So you can imagine like a McDonald's that might start relying more on automated orders, and they might scale back the number of employees that are in the store at any one time. Now, if the wages are actually low compared to the value of that employee being there, then when the minimum wage goes up, it's going to be a pure transfer from profits of the company to the employees. But it's a different case if all of a sudden the wages go beyond the value that the employee is bringing. So the big question is, where exactly are we in that balance? So there was fantastic research that came out of the University of Washington that chose to study a stepwise increase in the minimum wage in Seattle, where it had gone from $9 to $11 to $13 to $15 in stages. And the government worked with these researchers to get them access to basically all the wage data in the state. Now, what they found was in the first stage, when the minimum wage went from $9 to $11, that low-wage workers did end up being better off. They had higher wages, the hours didn't really go down that much, and they took home more money. But that changed when the wage jumped from $11 to $13 an hour. At that point, the average wage of a low-income worker had gone up by 3%, but the hours that they were given, the hours worked, went down by 7%. So they actually had less take-home pay. So their hours were cut by a bigger portion than their wages went up. So on average, these low-wage workers were worse off. Now, they did some further digging, and they found out that the workers who already had low-wage jobs on average did a little bit better. They had a little bit more take-home pay, but there was a sharp reduction in hiring of new low-wage workers. So you end up with a set of basically winners and losers here, where if you were a worker that had previously been making, let's say, $12 an hour, now you're going to be making $13 or $14 an hour, and your hours aren't cut too much. But if you were someone who didn't have a job, you're now going to find it harder to get one, and you're going to remain unemployed. And in total, there was actually less money that was directed toward low-wage workers as a whole in the state.